So then, Frank, I mean, let's get right into it, because when you aren't your best in the biggest moments, it immediately means your legacy will be absolutely questioned, or in modern society, crushed. So I think we're all thinking the same thing with the Ravens loss. Mark Andrews isn't nearly the player we thought, but I mean, let's just, I'm making a joke here because we're going to talk about Lamar in a second, but Buffalo beats the Ravens 27-25. And of note here, I just want to point out Mark Andrews with the regrettable drop on a 2-point conversion that it was there. It was his to be had, which when you stack that on top of a fumble in the second half that was just as uncharacteristic as possible, it reminds you that at some point, this is why I say this all the time, Frank, context matters. Like when we talk about wins and losses, which are not just a quarterback stat, we have to have the context of the full story of what happened in the game. And I think this is just a little bit of a reminder of like, hey, the weather played a big part in some weird moments. These games were weird anyway. And Mark Andrews being one of the failures of the Ravens is not something that was on my bingo card for this matchup.
Not at all. You have to feel so bad for Mark Andrews. Like he's a heck of a player, right? Like he's just had a great career. He fumbles in the fourth quarter. That was a huge play. And I couldn't believe it when they said it on the CBS broadcast that it was only the second lost fumble of his career. Hadn't lost one since 2019. I was like, that can't be true. I got to look this up. And yeah, lo and behold, he has not lost a fumble since 2019. And so, and considering how often they throw him the ball, that's pretty remarkable. And just Terrell Bernard made a great play, punched it out. Maybe Mark Andrews shouldn't have been trying to scoot around the defense when he did, but whatever. He's trying to make a play. He just got a first down. The Ravens were in really good shape before that fumble. The Bills can't put him away. And Lamar has the type of drive that, boy, if they hit that 2-pointer and they win in overtime, we'd be talking about Lamar's legacy, right? Like that was his legacy drive, taking them all the way down the field, big play after big play, the touchdown to Isaiah Likely. And, they called the right 2-point play with Lamar on the move, which pick your poison. What are you going to do? And they came up to get Lamar, and he delivered a ball to Andrews. Now, we do have to, it wasn't a perfect pass. I mean, Andrews absolutely has to catch it, right? It's right in his breadbasket, but Lamar could have let him a little bit more, didn't have to make it so awkward, but still, Andrews has to make that catch, and he just drops it. And your heart just sinks for him because he's just, again, he's such a good player. And this is going to be, when we talk about, maybe years from now, when we talk about why did Lamar never make a Super Bowl if that comes to pass, we're going to look back and say, remember the Mark Andrews drop? Like it's unfortunate, but that's what these moments do to legacies, to careers. And I just feel so bad for Mark Andrews and the Ravens as a whole, who, look, they look like they were maybe not going to get blown out, because the Ravens really weren't going to get blown out. They're a really good team, but when it was 21-10 at half and the Bills were getting the ball first in the second half, you're like, this one could get really kind of messy, and they could put it away. The Ravens kept battling and got to a position where they could tie the game with 1:33 to go. And it ends up like that. That's just so heartbreaking.
I mean, let's not get it twisted here. The Ravens lose this game in a game that they lost, like we pointed out here, 2 points, epic. Oh my God, I can't believe they lost it. The Ravens outgained Baltimore in this game, 416 yards to 273. They had more first downs in this game. They won several of the key categories that you would think that they would want to win. What they didn't do is they didn't hold on to the football. 3 turnovers in this football game. Like, the Baltimore Ravens lost this game because they committed unforced errors. And we all know that in the playoffs, if you do that enough, man, it comes back to bite you. And that's the staggering part, is that the Ravens played well enough to win. It's pretty easy. Absolutely. Even though Lamar started slow, I think it's pretty fair to say that the Ravens were in this game through the course of 60 minutes. Many times they looked like the better football team. They just kept stumbling over themselves over and over and over again. And by the way, they're taking on Superman. I don't know how you beat Josh Allen if you continually leave the door cracked for Josh Allen to kick it down, which, by the way, every time he needed to make a play to do that, he did it. So this is not a Lamar Jackson loss. This is a complete Ravens loss.
No, but that doesn't matter. That everybody, like the way we talk about NFL football sometimes is so poor that we're sit there and say, well, Lamar can't win the big one, obviously. Like, this was his fault. Yes, the interception was bad. Interested to see really what happened on that play. It looked like Rashad Bateman slowed down a little bit, or they just weren't on the same page? Let's put it that way. There's a reason Taylor Rapp was fair catching that interception. It wasn't just that Lamar made a bad pass. Like, there was something going on in that play. Lamar fumbles. Like, okay, that's going to happen when it's 10 degrees or whatever it was in Buffalo. Not ideal. He needs to hold on to the ball. But Lamar, I mean, again, had him in position to tie the game at the end. This wasn't some Lamar just melted down and lost the game. Like, could he have done more? Yes. The Ravens themselves could have done more. Like you said, you're not going to beat a team as good as the Buffalo Bills when you're 0-3 on the turnover margin. Like, that's just not going to happen very often. And the fact that they were as close as they were speaks of how well they played, turning it over 3 times to none for the Bills. And yeah, I mean, you look back at this, and Baltimore should be right back in this spot. Like, they're not one of these teams where you're like, oh, the window's closed. It's tough every offseason. You have decisions to make, and Derrick Henry's going to be older and stuff like that. But you assume the Ravens are going to be back here, but also it ain't guaranteed. It never is. You just never know in the NFL with injuries and bad luck and just whatever happens. A team ages a little bit. So, again, just as tough of a loss to the Ravens as you can get, because like you said, they played well enough to win this game. There's no question about it. There's just one thing they didn't do, and that's not turn the ball over and I guess catch a 2-point conversion at the end.
That's a big thing. But don't you feel, I mean, if we're being honest, don't you feel like this was a sigh of relief moment for the Buffalo Bills too? Like, this was an ugly football game because of the conditions. We knew it was going to be an ugly football game. This was where Josh Allen had to be at his best. And frankly, I think Josh Allen had to be careful with the football, which he was. 16-22 for $127. We're not talking about a big game here. In fact, other than Khalil Shakir, really nobody got going in the passing game. But the other part of this is that you knew that, frankly, Josh Allen was going to have to just continually live to see another down, 10 carries for 20 yards. Again, these are not epic numbers for Josh Allen. Never really felt like he got going. But here's what he didn't do. He didn't screw up. It was the ultimate live to see another down sort of game. But most importantly, the Bills just took advantage of the small opportunities they got. They win this game. And now it's just getting out of the divisional round, getting to the AFC Championship. Yeah, no, they got to take on the Chiefs. That's not an easy task. But it did feel to me like towards the end of the game, there was this pressure mounting around the Bills. Even after they got the lead late in the game, the pressure just felt like it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So to me, the balloon pop the nation felt at the end of Sunday night was the pop of pressure finally getting off the Bills' backs to get that win at home in the divisional round.
I mean, it's because of their past. Obviously, they've never won a Super Bowl, and just so many games that they've just gotten punched right in the gut right at the end. Going back, Ronnie Harmon dropping the pass, Scott Norwood missing the field goal, Thurman Thomas forgetting his helmet, even the Music City Miracle, 13 seconds against the Chiefs a couple of years ago, Tyler Bass wide right last year. It just, all these scars for Bills fans that you just kind of felt this pressure. You're absolutely right. And Lamar's driving them downfield. And Mark Andrews drop. Well, I feel terrible for Mark Andrews. That was kind of the lucky bounce the Bills haven't gotten in years and years and years. And maybe if you're the Bills, you're saying, maybe fortune's finally on our side for once. Maybe this is our year. Maybe that's the sign that we could go on and win this whole thing. Because they can. The Chiefs can too. Like, I think when you talk about the AFC, both of these teams are Super Bowl worthy teams. It's just whoever wins, Ali Frazier won next Sunday night. It's going to be a great game. But the Bills, yes, the Bills kind of had all these ghosts, I think, chasing them at the end of this game of all these playoff disappointments they've had through the years. And not all these players wear that on their shoulders. They weren't old enough to really know about Scott Norwood and all that. They hear about it, I'm sure, but this wasn't on them. But even the past few years of the Josh Allen era and these tough losses they've had to the Bengals in the snow in the divisional round a few years ago, stuff like that. And now it's like, okay, like, that's a game we lose. Like, that's a game in the past we find a way to lose. Just some weird thing happens, some bad luck, but the breaks went their way. And I do want to say this, like, we've all been the MVP discussion, right? It happened over the last month of the season. And what was the narrative? It's, oh, well, Lamar Jackson just has such a much better team around him, and Josh Allen is kind of carrying these guys to the finish line. And Josh Allen obviously has so much worse teammates than Lamar Jackson. That's why he's the MVP. I think this was not a Josh Allen game in any way. You kind of touched upon it. He didn't play bad. He played a mistake-free game. He did make some big plays when he had to, but 127 passing yards, 20 rushing yards. This was not a Josh Allen game. This was not, hey, Josh, take the ball and do something with it because we need you to bail us out. No. This is James Cook and the rest of those running backs really controlling the tempo. This was the Bills' defense playing pretty well overall. I mean, forcing the big plays when they had to, holding the Ravens to 10 points in the first half. This was a kind of team effort that the Bills don't get credit for. They just get this whole narrative of Josh Allen has a whole franchise on his shoulders, and that's the only reason they're winning. And this game was opposite of that. Josh Allen was dare I say, kind of a game manager in this one. And nothing against Josh. Like, he's an awesome, incredible player. But I think this game proves to the Bills, hey, we're better than just Josh Allen's backup band. Like, this is a pretty good football team that can go on and win a Super Bowl. And I think this was a kind of a big step in their development as a team to win when Josh Allen wasn't Josh Allen. He's certainly good, but this wasn't Josh Allen doing everything. This was the Bills playing really, really well to face a really good Ravens team.
Yeah, credit the defense. 7 tackles for loss and 5 quarterback hits in this game. Like, those are big numbers that are disruptors. Now
it's hard against this Ravens team, man. Like, how do you defend them at some point? But I thought they did a good job. It got away from them a little bit in the second half. Derrick Henry started to get going, and Lamar started making plays. But they gave up a ton of yards, 400 some. They couldn't get the stop at the end, all that stuff. But when you play this Ravens team, you're getting graded on a curve. Like, that's an awesome offense. And I thought the Bills should be proud of their defensive effort. They did enough to win. And on a day where Josh Allen was pretty quiet, part of what they did.
Instead of going day to day, we're going to go conference to conference here because it makes more sense to me that they now get the right to go to Kansas City and take on the Chiefs. The Chiefs win 23-14 over Houston. This game, I don't know, Frank, it just felt like it was a lot tighter than I expected it to be. I know we always make the joke that the Chiefs don't blow anybody out and nobody beats them in a close game. But, man, there was a long time in this game where I kept thinking, by God, are the Texans actually going to find a way to beat Kansas City? Like, we all saw how it played out. But I think a credit to the Texans here for being great and a credit for the Chiefs, or let's say the Texans for making it competitive, and credit for the Chiefs for doing what they always do, winning a tough football game.
I want to get something out of the way real quick. We got to talk about this. We have to talk about the officiating, right? Like,
I'm ready. I am amped for that. I've got numbers. I've got data. Go ahead.
Okay, you go ahead because I have opinions on this, but I want to hear what you have to say because I'm one of these people who the NFL's not rigged. It's not. It's not rigged. They don't care. 120 million people are going to watch a Super Bowl if you put out the backups of any team in the NFL. The Jaguars and the Titans both go and they play their second string. 120 million people are still going to turn in a Super Bowl. They don't rig it for ratings. That's stupid. Like, let's not be that. Do the Chiefs get calls in key situations? Yes. I think if you watch enough NFL football, though, a lot of teams get calls in key situations, especially good ones. Like, Michael Jordan got a lot of calls. You know why? Because he's really good.
That's my favorite example.
Like,
that's my favorite example.
Go ahead, Fitz. I want to hear what
No, I love this. Keep going on this because Michael Jordan objectively pushed off on the most famous shot of his career. Like, my God, like, you want to talk about? We've seen this in every sport. How there were rules created simply to change the way quarterbacks are hit because it benefited Tom Brady. Like, all you had to do was sneeze in the vicinity of Peyton Manning, and there was like great quarterbacks get the calls. Frank, I don't know why that's even controversial. Like, star players always get the benefit of calls. I don't care which sport we're talking about. I don't care which star we're talking about. So let's start there because I think you're right.
Yeah, but do you have a problem with the way the game is officiated? And like, I had somebody like, and I call them out because it's on Twitter or whatever, but somebody was like, the NFL needs to address this because everybody's talking about it. It looks bad for the league. They need to tell the officials that the Chiefs can't get any more 50-50 calls, that they need to be sure when they're, and I'm like, you know what you're talking about? You're talking about bias. When you talk, like, people, fans, every fan, oh my goodness, everything that happened over the weekend was, well, they would have suspended that guy for 14 weeks if it happened to Mahomes. It's like, let's stop. Like, this is boring, whatever. But people think they're biased towards the Chiefs, but if you call it differently to not call it like the way they see it, that's bias against the Chiefs. You know what I mean? Like, this whole circular argument is just ridiculous. And people are so sick of the Chiefs winning that they want to create this conspiracy theory that all the officials are just want the Chiefs to win. I don't buy that for a half a second. But yes, there were some bad calls on Saturday. I get that. I totally get that.
Bad calls happen.
This is not some conspiracy.
Officials are humans, and bad calls happen. And by the way, if it's a borderline call, if it's borderline roughing the passer, they are told, no matter who the star is, they're coached, they're taught to always lean towards protect. So if it's a borderline call, did I think some of those calls were a little borderline? Yeah, sure. But does that happen in every single game? Yeah, sure. If you believe the NFL's fixed, just stop watching it.
Stop
Because
watching,
right?
Like,
Or accept that if you believe it's WWE, then watch it like WWE and stop caring so much. But realistically, never let numbers get in the way of a bad narrative. Because Frank, I've got numbers for you. Here are actual facts. I will credit Josh DeBoe from the Associated Press. Okay. He tweeted a couple of these out. I need everybody to hear this and hear it loudly. Since Patrick Mahomes became the starting quarterback for the Chiefs in 2018, Kansas City has been penalized for 693 more yards than their opponents, playoffs included, the fourth worst penalty differential in that span. And to be clear, that means every game the Chiefs have an opponent. So we're not talking about, well, sometimes, some ways. Every game they have an opponent. If you look at the entire lifetime of Patrick Mahomes as a starter, the Chiefs have actually been penalized for more yards than any of their opponents. And here's the even better one. 3rd and 4th down to extend drives. First downs by penalty on 3rd and 4th down alone. This is a huge stat. First downs on penalty on 3rd and 4th down awarded to the team since 2018. Again, playoffs included. The Chiefs have been given 84 first downs on 3rd and 4th down. 84. That might sound like a lot until you find out that their opponents in that same time span have been given 104. They literally have 20 less automatic first downs on 3rd and 4th down. So if your argument is the Chiefs get more calls than the teams they play, the facts actually show you your argument is wrong. If your argument is the Chiefs get more first downs on key 3rd and 4th downs during the course of the games, the facts show your argument is actually wrong. You're tired of this because we see Mahomes every week, because we watch these games every week, because he's on national TV constantly.
Yes.
So
No,
you see it all the time. That's why we're tired of it. That's why everybody wants to find a reason, because your quarterback can't do what Mahomes does, because your team can't survive the penalties the way the Chiefs do. The fact is, the penalties actually stack up against Kansas City in such a way it should tear them down. But they're so damn good, it doesn't matter. That frustrates everybody. But confirmation bias doesn't change the facts. The facts show there is no actual bias for the Kansas City Chiefs.
No, and there's no reason for it either. Again, like, the NFL's doing just fine. They don't need this. This is not a league that's propped up by 1 or 2 stars. Like, this is a league that has a perfect product as far as the consumer goes. Like, a consumer is going to tune in no matter who is in the Super Bowl. You know what would be pretty good for the NFL? Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills making the Super Bowl, because markets don't really matter to the NFL that much, and it would be something different. Oh my goodness, Josh Allen, the Bills going for their first ever Super Bowl. You know what else would have been good for the NFL? It's not going to happen, but the Detroit Lions making the Super Bowl. I mean, stuff like that. Like, they're impervious to like this whole market thing or stars thing. Like, the NFL makes stars. Like, stars don't come to them. They make stars themselves. So this whole notion that the NFL like is rigging games or whatever for the Chiefs is just preposterous. Like, you have to let that go. I get complaining about officiating, and you're going to see missed calls, and there are some bad missed calls, and officiating does seem to be getting worse because it's harder to do than ever. They're asking these officials to do more than ever, but let's stop there and not make every single game about, oh, the NFL's rigged. Now they're in bed with gambling, so it's got to be rigged. They don't care. They don't care about your $20 parlay, I promise. They really don't. Like, it's not that big of a deal to the NFL if you win that player prop of Patrick Mahomes under on his yards. Like, they just don't care.
Also,
so
why does everybody presume whenever there's a bad beat, which we had in this game for a lot of people, there's a bad beat, then everybody's like, oh, the NFL's got that fixed. So you presume that the NFL had money on one side of this and not the other?
Right,
is that the presumption?
Again, you could always bet the under, and you could always bet the other team. Yeah.
I don't understand why we always presume that an ending must be rigged in order for the NFL to make money when, in fact, the NFL could have action on either side of it if they were really going to be that terrible. Or by the way, Vegas makes money by you placing your bets. They don't care about payout on that stuff. They set a line where they get an equal amount of action on both sides, and they take a cut. They get their vig out the top. Like, they're happy. They're fine. Like, Vegas doesn't need the outcome to go one way or the other more often than not. So, like, yeah, the amount of misinformation, shocking in today's social media world that comes out for that.
And now, like, let's get to the game a little bit, because I think one thing that leads people to be very frustrated with the Chiefs, not just that they're winning, because that happens. Like, everybody gets sick of a dynasty. They do at this day and age. It just happens. Like, it never used to happen back in the day, really. Nobody, I don't think, hated the 49ers. They were kind of like, wow, 49ers are pretty darn good. But part of that, or part of any dynasty, it's usually a dominant dynasty. How many times have we seen the Chiefs play really poorly and win games? Like, not even...
Isn't that dominance, though?
I guess, is it? Like, the Houston Texans outplayed them in this game in many, many ways. They outgained them by, I think, 130 yards and didn't lose a turnover battle and all this kind of stuff. And they still lost the game. And in some ways, that is a very impressive thing to do. But I feel like when you're getting outplayed every week, this isn't some 1989 Niners team or the 2007 Patriots or who are just blowing teams away. And you look and you say, wow, that team is just incredible. And every week we watch this Chiefs team and we go, how do they keep winning these games? And this game was kind of like that, where you're like, the Texans just a couple plays go their way. They should have won this game. And Chiefs, we're not even talking about the Chiefs anymore. We're talking about the Texans going against the Bills. It's just, I think that frustrates fans that this is not a more dominant Chiefs team, that this is just a team that seems to be just doing the bare minimum and passing all their classes. You look and you say, how is that possible?
But at the same time, this is a nugget that's been out there that I love. The Texans outgained the Chiefs by, you referenced it, like 130 yards. Teams to outgame their opponents by 100-plus yards and commit 0 turnovers were 46-0 in the playoffs during the Super Bowl era before Saturday. They're now 46-1.
Crazy.
It's better to be lucky than good. And, Mahomes, I'll reference it again, and I mentioned it on Twitter and immediately got crushed by people saying, well, the refs. But Mahomes literally falling to the ground.
Great.
And as he's falling, laid out like Superman, he throws a laser of a pass into the end zone for a touchdown. You just look at that stuff and you're like, this defense gave up 336 yards and didn't force any turnovers, yet it felt like nothing was ever easy for the Texans, right?
I agree.
There is something about the Chiefs that they find a way to poke whatever your weakness is. This is a combination. Andy Reid, I've said this a million times on the show, when you have the best coach, the best GM, you have the best quarterback, and you have, I think, the best defensive coordinator in the NFL all on one team, really tough to beat them. And you look at the way they've structured the organization. You look at how many home runs they get out of the draft, where everybody else is like, Karlaftis is somebody out of Purdue that, nobody was sitting there saying, oh man, the Chiefs just drafted Karlaftis. What a huge impact he had on this game, and what a huge impactful player he's become. Like, it's what good teams do. Good teams don't worry about trading up to try and get the first pick of the draft. Good teams find their quarterback, in the early teens somehow, and then that guy becomes legendary. Good teams sit there, wait for the end of the first round and find a superstar pass rusher. They find a shutdown corner in the second round. Like, this is what the Chiefs do. They've spent years getting ready to be great, and now they're just they are freaking unstoppable. And I hate it as a Raiders fan, but as a football fan, I look at it every single time I see it, and I'm like, man, I got nothing but respect for the ability to find ways to win.
Yeah, and part of what I'm trying to say is, like, I guess you're right. If you have the best, let's say, best GM, best coach, best quarterback, best defensive coordinator, shouldn't you be winning some of these games 34-3? Like,
that is fair.
I mean, never. It's like, should you really be getting outgained by the Houston Texans by 130 yards? Like, it's just this conundrum, and we've had this all season. It seems like we talk about this all the time, where there's a part of my brain that just watches this Chiefs team escaping week after week after week. And part of me is impressed. Like, they somehow find ways to win. They know how to win. There's no question about that. They know how to win football games. But the other part of my brain is saying, this is so unsustainable, that this is not a dominant team. This is not the 90s Cowboys who are just trouncing opponents. This is a team that's it just seems like they're hitting on 18 every time and getting a 3. Like, I don't know how they keep doing it over and over.
You're so right, Frank. I think the reason that people have turned on the Chiefs is because every week they watch Kansas City win the sort of game their team has been losing for years.
Yeah, true.
Like,
very
when
true.
you watch the Cowboys in their dynasty, or the 49ers in their dynasty, or New England in their dynasty, you knew coming in, you're like, man, they just do everything better. When you watch the Chiefs, you're like, why does my team lose these types of games every single week, every single year? And their team's like, got it.
Why don't we get the blocked field goal against the Broncos? Why don't we have the Raiders shotgun snap going off Aiden O'Connell's chest? Like, why don't we get these breaks? And it just seems like this always happens for the Chiefs. Now you create your own luck. I get that. And make no mistake about it.
No, sometimes you're just lucky.
Sometimes you just get lucky. Yeah. 7 straight AFC Championship games is absurd. Like, that should not happen in the modern NFL. Like, the league is not set up for any team to go to 7 straight conference championship games. Hats off to the Chiefs. This dynasty is unreal, but it's just a different type of dynasty that we're used to, where we're used to just the 49ers beating the Broncos 55-10, like, and being like, that team is, you can't beat that team. That's one of the all-time greats. Well, I look at this Chiefs team, and I again, one part of me says they're 16-2 at 16-1 in games they tried. They're back-to-back Super Bowl champs, and they might win the third one in a row. And that's one of the greatest accomplishments I've seen in all my life watching the NFL. But yet I watch these games individually, and I'm like, how's this happening over and over and over where the Chiefs win these games?
So we'll move on 1 second, but let's get down to the nitty-gritty here on one important thing we haven't talked about. Frank, what is your least favorite liquor to shoot in the world? If I went to the bar and said I'm buying shots, what would you not drink a shot of?
Probably Jägermeister. I retired from that in college, yes.
It's amazing. You are one of the many people in my life that hate Jaeger. And while I, at this point, haven't had a drink in a long time, if I did, Jaeger would probably be my first choice. I love Jaeger. All right. So, but this is the lesson we're learning in 2025. Frank, next year, if at any point during the season, either of us decide that we're going to say that Travis Kelce is washed, I think before we say that, we should have to take a shot of Jaeger, right? Like, just take a shot of Jaeger and then, like, think about the fact that you're going to have a large shot, an uncomfortably large shot. And before we give that take, because this is the second year in a row where during the regular season, it's up, it's down. Is he there? Is he? No, I don't know. He looks cooked. He looks slow. He's just not the same Kelce. And then what happened last year in the playoffs? Like, playoffs hit Kelce, and Kelce all of a sudden goes to another level. What did we see in that game? 7 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Unblockable. Even when they knew the ball was getting to him, they couldn't get their bodies up to Kelce. And I just watched it. And I thought, man, the next time anybody says Kelce's washed, you should have to take a sizable shot of your least favorite liquor first so that you at least know what you're doing when you say it.
Yeah, and they're just saying, right? They're just saving him. It's crazy that a team that started 15-1 this season was saving a Hall of Fame player for the playoffs. But that's what it seems like, right? Like, and I get he's probably working his way into shape at some point this season. There was all those rumblings. But this guy averaged 8.5 yards a catch. Like, he was so mundane most of the season. There were times where Noah Gray looked like their better tight end. And then you're right. You get to the playoffs, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's Kelce. Hadn't had a play all season with more than 20 yards after the catch, and he is rumbling downfield for some 40-some yard catch. It's just like, yep, yeah, we should just keep this in mind for next year when again, if Travis Kelce's still playing, who knows if he wants to go out on top or not. But yeah, we should, yes, this is what Travis Kelce is at this point in his career, where he's the closer. You're going to bring him in okay, let's get ramped up for the playoffs because I'm going to put up 117. It's just an unbelievable player, obviously. One of the all-time greats.
Okay, so way too early. Bills, Chiefs, AFC Championship game. We have days this week to break this down, but your first right now inclination, who you got?
How can you go against the Chiefs? That's my first. My gut reaction is just, do I think the Bills are a better football team? Yeah, honestly, I do. I mean, I think that they do more things at a higher level than the Chiefs have consistently throughout the season. But the Chiefs just win games like that, and that's got a dumb analysis. Oh, the Chiefs just win. Yeah, that's the whole point, right? But it's just, this has been one of the weirder seasons I can remember where, again, a team was 16-1, counting the playoffs and not counting that Denver game where they just waved the white flag. But yet, I'm like, they're so vulnerable. But yet, at the end of the day, we all know the Chiefs are going to win this game and go on to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Bills are the better team, and I don't care. I'm still taking the Chiefs. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll hit the NFC when we come back.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
Frank, the best games were not just in the AFC, but here, let's start with this. I'm going to get a little crazy with you here. The first game to break down here should be LA-Philly. It was an epic game. But can we start on the opposite side just because I feel like getting weird? The biggest surprise to me over the course of the entire weekend was that for all 4 games was that the Detroit Lions flat out didn't show up for a huge playoff game. Like I hear everybody, and I see all the fans. I've got friends that are Lions fans that are sitting there screaming about the coaching and the play calling and all these things. I just have to loudly scream here. Look, you can coach and play call all day long. Jameson Williams didn't have to throw that football that didn't need to be thrown. Jared Goff could have put some hair under that ball that was intercepted in the end zone. Like, the number of stupid mistakes by the Lions in this game was absolutely shocking to me against a Washington team that they're on fire. And Jayden Daniels looks incredible. And I thought this was just going to be point after point after point. And in the second half, the Lions shrank. The Commanders just got bigger and bigger. Kudos to Washington. But Detroit needs to look in the mirror and figure out what their problem is for them to have that sort of a turd in that stadium in that game.
I think a big part of it, Fitz, was just the pressure of everybody knows the history of the Lions. Everybody knows how desperate that fan base is to get a winner. Everybody knows how passionate that fan base is. And there were 2 home games away from a Super Bowl, and it was all set up for them. And they have this magical 15-win season, the 9th team in NFL history to win 15, along with the Chiefs this year. They won 15 as well. And you just felt like, in some sense, all of this put more pressure on the Lions. Like, this is it. Like, you got to get it done this year. They all know Ben Johnson's probably leaving. Aaron Glenn's probably leaving. Like, a lot of these salary cap hits are going to start to catch up to him and making every guy seemingly on their offense the highest paid guy in the NFL. And it just seemed like this was their best shot at finally getting that Super Bowl. They were favorites coming into this weekend at BetMGM. The Lions were favored to win a Super Bowl. The first time in our lifetimes, we could say that. And they just fell so flat. And you could tell something was a little bit off with the Lions. By the way, the Vikings, my goodness, your offense must have been broken to only get 9 points against this defense in Week 18, right? Because the rest of the time we saw this defense late in the season, they had no players who were healthy. They were just giving up whatever the opponent wanted to do. And that started in this game. And you're like, okay, this isn't a good start for the Lions, but they're going to get it going. They'll be fine. Terry McLaurin races for a touchdown on that receiver screen. And then Goff throws the pick 6 right after that. And you're like, this. We've watched enough playoff games where you had that sense of this is how it's going to go for the Lions today. And they're going to choke this away. And they did. And I feel so bad for the Lions fans and so bad for the Lions. I mean, Dan Campbell's up after the game, basically crying at the podium. You could tell how much that loss crushed him. The loss crushes the fans, the players. Like, this was it for the Lions. The bad part about all of this, the bad part about the NFL and the way things turn over so quickly, you're not guaranteed to get back to this position ever again. And we said that, I get it. We said it last year after the Lions blew the 17-point lead in the NFC Championship game. You're not guaranteed to get back here. They had this magical season, and they were in a better position in some ways to make it back to a Super Bowl. But as years go on, this window doesn't stay open forever. Like I said, they're probably going to lose both of their coordinators who have been so big a part of their success. Things just happen too. Guys get hurt, key guys, and you just never know. This might be the lot. We might look back honestly in 20 years and say, wow, the Lions never made a Super Bowl and that was their shot and they blew it. And that stinks. That just stinks so bad for Detroit, their fans, their team, and everything else.
Yeah. So does this lessen the Aaron Glenn hype a little bit? Because they got, I will say, for my money coming into this, knowing that Scary Terry McLaurin is he's aptly named. I mean, I think one of the most overlooked superstar caliber wide receivers in the NFL is Terry McLaurin. And knowing the deficiencies that the Lions had in the passing defense, particularly, I pretty loudly kept saying I thought that the Lions would be able to throw, or the Washington would be able to throw the ball all over the Lions. And that's exactly what they did, right? So I don't know that they had, especially after Amik Robertson went out, I don't know that they were going to have the horses to compete in the rodeo, if you know what I mean. But I have to wonder a little bit, like, everything had gotten so hyped for the Lions defense, and they didn't show up. I mean, this in the first half, neither team's defense stood a chance. But in the second half, the Lions just didn't have an answer, didn't have an adjustment. There was nothing they could do. Does it sort of lessen the Aaron Glenn hype for head coach in your mind?
It doesn't for me. I still think he's a heck of a coach, and he's a good leader, and I think he's going to be a fine head coach. This was probably not his best day, but again, when you're so beat up injury-wise on defense, it's just bad luck. Like, they lost everybody. They were, again, when Amik went down, it was like, oh my goodness, another one? Really? And you could tell that was a gruesome elbow injury. And you just like, what can you do at some point? And I will ask this. I don't want to go on a long tangent about this, but I think it's interesting. You had a coordinator in Aaron Glenn who look, his unit didn't play well. There's no getting around that. You got a guy in Ben Johnson who they had some good plays and they moved the ball and all that, but I don't know if maybe he wasn't at his sharpest. These are two guys who were interviewing for head coaching jobs during the week. Does the NFL need to change this? I think they do. I think this is so unfair to playoff teams and the coaches. A guy like Aaron Glenn, who has been waiting to be an NFL head coach, right? This is a dream job that he's got to go interview for. And you got your mind on two different things during one of the biggest weeks as a defense coordinator for the Detroit Lions, trying to stop Jayden Daniels. And you're spending hours on a head coaching interview. You can't turn that down. You have to do it. So that hurts. It puts the coordinators in a bad spot. It puts the teams in a bad spot. The teams looking for coaches are kind of in a bad spot because they can't wait, So I think the NFL needs to revamp this whole thing. I get there's going to be tampering. The NFL tampers like nobody else. But I think that no interview should happen until after a Super Bowl. This is just, it's so unfair to the Detroit Lions. And I'm not saying there's a reason they lost this game, but it's so unfair to the Detroit Lions that their two coordinators who are superstars at what they do were spending hours interviewing for head coaching jobs with other teams instead of figuring out, like, how do we stop Terry McLaurin? Like, stuff like that. Am I wrong? Like, I just think that the system is really bad and it penalizes the best teams in the NFL.
I think the NFL should implement a rule that no interview of any sort with anybody in any way can take place until after the Super Bowl, and no hiring can be made until a week after the Super Bowl. And if that means you have to move your entire offseason back, guess what? You actually have the time to do that. Like, if you need to move the combine back a little bit, free agency back a little bit, even if you needed to move the draft back a little bit, you could, in theory, do all of those things. But most importantly, I think what you do is you stop owners by that point. Like, sure, you want to let somebody go at the end of the season. Now you have a month and a half to sit down with your consulting firms and talk to your people and figure out what you're looking for and who you're looking for. Maybe develop a better strategy. Maybe as an organization, spend more time scouting the coaches that you want to interview and getting a sense of who those coaches are. I think that's all really smart. And Frank, I think what people need to remember is that an interview is just not just Ben Johnson sitting down on Zoom with the Raiders saying, "Oh, I'd love to take this job. Gee, thanks for the time." Part of what it is what's your plan? How would you run things? What do you think of our roster? Those are questions that you need to have answers for. Like, if you're Ben Johnson and you're interviewing for the Raiders job, part of what you need to have in that interview is a real plan for how you would best utilize the pieces they have on offense and defense, which means you're going to have studied the pieces they have on offense and defense, which means you're studying something that doesn't have anything to do with the game that's coming up. And it's a no-win situation for the coach because you have to be prepared. So I agree with you. I think part of the problem here is, and I'm not saying that either of these coaches or any of these coaches have truly been distracted from their playoff duties. But even if it just took 4 hours of an interview time away, that's 4 hours that you weren't working on the game plan.
That is a distraction. There's no way around it. And again, I'm not saying that's why the Commanders won, but it doesn't help the Lions. And C-Rob tells a story about McVay interviewing with the Rams back in the day. And he came into that meeting with a play. He's like, here's what I'm going to do with Jared Goff. And here's a cut-up of everything Jared Goff everything that can be fixed. What he does well, what he does. But these are the kind of things when you're trying to land a head coaching interview, you got to be ready for this. Like you said, like you can't just go in and be like, I want this job. Like, no, you need to be on top of everything. That takes time. Like, that's a distraction. You're not allowed to focus on the task at hand. And also when talking about like waiting until after a Super Bowl to have interviews, that's kind of what free agency is. From the end of the season to free agency is about 2.5 months. And you can study these guys and you can, yes, does tampering happen? I get that it does. But it's what's the difference? Like, yes, I get that it's going to take you some time to interview these coaches, but that everybody's kind of on the same playing field at that point. And these assistants deserve better. They don't deserve to be 1 foot in, 1 foot out with their teams for half of the week when you're trying to win a Super Bowl with them. It's very unfair to me.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. I don't want to get off this game without mentioning that Jayden Daniels is just an absolute damn superstar. And
he's the best quarterback in the NFC, right? I mean, that's question has popped up a little bit. And my answer is absolutely.
Yeah, I'll give you that. And I mean, this is now on the Mount Rushmore for best rookie seasons we've ever seen from a quarterback at this point. And I saw an interesting thread on X. I know how we all feel about social media, but it was talking about how virtual reality has been a huge part of Jayden Daniels' training. And he started in his last year at LSU with a company that does VR. He wears a headset that plays at 1.7 times the actual game speed. So everything is so much faster when he sees it in his prep that the game is actually slower. I don't know why no one's ever thought of that. I don't know if that's the real key, but certainly they were talking about why it's helped him. All I know is that you want to talk about somebody that when the pressure was there, he never sped up what he was doing. When the moment needed to be big, it never felt like he was crumbling under it. Watch him in the pocket and watch, even as the pocket collapses, his ability to stay calm. He's calm on the sidelines. He's calm during the play. He's calm as he's calling the play out. He's calm in what he's reading. And he's executing. Some of the accuracy that we saw in this game was just, it was like watching a video game. Those passes aren't complete. And then I watched the Sunday night game, and I watched, for example, a deep throw that Lamar missed, and I thought, man, Jayden Daniels ain't missing that throw. Like, that's real right now. Jayden Daniels is playing so well. He's not making mistakes. He doesn't make the wrong throw. He doesn't make the wrong read. Like, this isn't a rookie quarterback season for the ages. This is becoming a quarterback season for the ages.
He's unbelievable. I mean, we've never seen anything like this as a rookie. We've done the whole Stroud thing where I said, this is never going to happen again. And then it happens next year. I get it. Like, this
is better than Stroud. This is better than Stroud.
This is the best rookie quarterback season I've ever seen. And I would have said that before the playoffs, before he went and won 2 straight road games in the playoffs, because throughout we're both old men, so we can speak from experience on this. The whole thing was, you don't want to have a rookie quarterback on the road in the playoffs. Like, that's just recipe for disaster. And here Jayden Daniels is facing a number 1 seed in a just raucous environment, right? And he's just calm. And I brought this up that Dan Quinn went for it on 4th down, I believe second to Dan Campbell this year. He went for it on 4th down a ton of times. And maybe when he took this job, he said, this time around, when I'm a head coach, I'm going to be more aggressive on 4th down. I'm going to really push the envelope here. But Dan Quinn doesn't go for it on 4th down all the time if he doesn't have ultimate trust in his quarterback. So Dan Quinn, every time it's 4th and 3, we're going for it. It's because he believes Jayden Daniels is going to make the play. When was the last time you saw that level of trust between a team, a coach, and a rookie quarterback where you just know he's going to make that play? It's uncanny. We haven't seen it before. I'll tell you this, like, the Philadelphia Eagles aren't just walking to a Super Bowl because they're facing a rookie quarterback in the conference championship. This is not a rookie anymore. This is a superstar. This is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And I can't sit here and rule out Jayden Daniels putting that franchise on his back for one more game and taking them to the Super Bowl. We've never seen anything like this. And that would be the first time a rookie quarterback carries his team to a Super Bowl, but Jayden Daniels is special. And we could all see that right away. And we saw Jayden Daniels throw 5 touchdowns and beat the Philadelphia Eagles just a few weeks ago. Like, it's not out of the question that the Eagles shouldn't feel any level of confidence just because they're facing a rookie, because this rookie's unlike anybody we've ever seen.
All right, you mentioned the Eagles. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll get to the Eagles getting to the NFC Championship by way of it might have been the best game of the day. We're finally getting to it. We'll do it next. All right, Frank, the place went nuts. Everybody was yelling and screaming. The Eagles win 28-22. The game very close in the end, but it looked with a few minutes left like Philly had it under control. Obviously, that's not the way it played out. But let's just start here with the true king, because we've talked so much about running backs. I will remind the world that as of right now, there are 30 wide receivers in the NFL paid more than Saquon Barkley. That's important to remind everybody, because Saquon today just absolutely, I mean, you want to talk about taking a moment and making that moment his. Unbelievable game for Saquon. Unbelievable game when they needed him most, and it looked like, nope, this is the moment. This game could get close now. The Rams had no answer the last time they played him. They had no answers yet again. 26 carries for 205 yards. And if that wasn't enough, 4 catches for 27 yards. Saquon Barkley is the reason the Eagles are headed to the NFC Championship game. And I cannot believe, I mean, you just see it yet again. Smart teams with good offensive lines go out this season and they get big name, high quality running backs at a discount. What do you know? Works out. I don't know how anyone stops Saquon.
It's impressive. It's unbelievable. If they go out and win a Super Bowl, and let's say Saquon just kind of performs to a normal level, not necessarily 205 yards in each of the next 2 games, but let's say he has a couple 100-yard games and they win a Super Bowl. is this the greatest running back season of all time? Like, I think you could make the argument. Like, rushed for 2,000 in the regular season, is in the MVP conversation, and 205 to start the playoffs. And he has just been putting his offense on his back. They can't pass the ball. Like, they're really non-functioning passing offense right now. I mean, and then Jalen Hurts getting injured with his knee doesn't help that at all. But Barkley's just doing everything. You should not be able to just snap off 60, 70-yard touchdowns. And he's done it regularly this season. It is maybe the most impressive season I've ever seen. I wasn't alive for like OJ in 1973 or anything like that, or Jim Brown's best seasons. But in my lifetime, especially the Eagles go on to win a Super Bowl, this is right up there with the CJ2K season and Eric Dickerson and any other season you can name for a running back. This has been just as impressive. He is awesome. He is carrying this team. He's becoming a Philly legend after only one season.
By the way,
really great stuff.
I'll say yet again, he is the MVP of the NFL this year. I realize he doesn't play quarterback, so nobody's going to give it to him. I watched this game. If the Eagles win a Super Bowl, it's because of Saquon. No different than if the Bills win a Super Bowl, it's because of Josh Allen, all of these guys that we talk about. You watch this in a game where, Frank, I don't know if it's A.J. Brown's health. I don't know if there's something off with A.J. Brown. He's just not a part of the game plan, really, at this point. They didn't have any true receiving threat that was doing anything. They're in the snow where there's absolutely just, the snow was coming down. A million reasons for guys to not be able to do anything. And Philly, because of the knee injury to Jalen Hurts, didn't really have the availability of the brotherly shove tush push thing either. So even more was going to be on Saquon's back. And even with the Rams saying, we will do whatever it takes to try and slow you down, he peaks at over 20 miles an hour running on a 80-yard touch. I mean, he was slowing down at the end to just turn around and look at Jared Verse and make sure that Jared Verse knew he couldn't catch him. Like, the level of dominance we're seeing when everybody knows what's coming, this is incredible from Saquon. He is the NFL MVP to me.
Yeah, like you said, the Rams had to know what's coming at some point. Yeah. They had to get out of the first quarter when the snow wasn't coming down that bad at that point. I mean, it's not ideal conditions, but they had to be like, yeah, the Philly can't throw the ball downfield at all. Like, they did not complete one pass of more than 5 air yards in the entire first half. They got a few passes downfield. Dallas Goedert in the second half, but really not much to Devontae, not much to A.J. Brown. This is a really almost a broken passing game at some point. And then Jalen gets hurt. He's not a threat in a running game anymore. They were calling that out on the broadcast. So the Rams knew exactly where the ball was going, and Saquon still busts a 78-yard run to kind of put them in a huge hole. Like, just unbelievable what he's been able to do. Now, can I give a little bit of a controversial take here, Fitz?
Oh, I like that. Give me controversy. Make it juicy. Let's go.
You might not like me after this, but snow games are kind of cool to watch. Like, they're awesome theater. Like, they look cool.
Don't do it.
But it really slops up. It slops up the game. So
who cares?
Like, it was so hard to watch. Like, I kept watching this game, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, would the Rams have won this game if it was normal conditions? Because for in the second half, when it was really coming down until the last 5 minutes, really, when they got in desperation mode, they couldn't even function on a football field. They couldn't do simple football movements. And it was like, I just want to see the teams at their best, especially at this point in the playoffs. But isn't that the ultimate reason? And this was so hard for the Rams.
Frank, this is the ultimate reason that home field advantage matters so much.
No, sure. No, and Philly earned that, and they handled the conditions better. I get that. It was a sloppy game in the second half in many ways. The only guy who seemed like he was playing on in 78-degree weather in Florida or California was Saquon Barkley. He was
that's fair.
Playing at a different speed than everybody else. Hats off to him. That's awesome. But for this Rams team, who almost pulled this off. This would have been one of the craziest comebacks in NFL history, because with Saquon busts that long touchdown run with, I think it was about 5:30 left in the game or whatever it was, the Rams are down 13. Philly misses the extra point, which kind of keeps the door alive. But the Rams did not move the ball at all. Like, they couldn't function on offense. And you're like, okay, well, this one's done. And then the Rams just march downfield, get the touchdown, get the stop, get the ball back. Stafford has him move it back downfield, hits Puka Nacua on awesome catch by Puka. And you're like, wow, oh my goodness, the Rams are going to do it. Yeah, that was awesome. That was a great play. And you're like, oh my goodness, the Rams are going to do this. This is going to be one of the biggest chokes of all time. This is going to be one of the biggest comebacks of all time. Jalen Carter, who is practically unblockable when they didn't double him. What a player he's become. He gets a big sack on third down and kind of ruins the Rams' comeback hopes. But yes, this was a very entertaining game. And the backdrop of the snow. It is cool to watch, I guess, but I did want to see that. I'd rather see this game played on a neat field that isn't, 3 inches of snow and everybody sliding around.
That's because you're a professional, Frank. I'm an agent of chaos. Like, here's the rule. If it's not my favorite team, then I want to see it in snow. If it's my favorite team, I don't want anything to do with snow. And look, I realize that my favorite team happens to be West Coast, so snow is a big part of it.
Also played one of the most famous snow games of all time.
100%. That I get to re-see every time the NFL's like, most famous snow playoff endings, whatever. But I do think, and I think this for my buddies too, like I've got a good friend that's a massive Bills fan. And for him, I was like, man, that kind of breaks my heart that this game is taking place in the snow because that's a variable. But then I start watching it, I'm like, oh, screw the variables. I just want the chaos. And the chaos is amazing to watch. I think this season was a really good year for the Rams, and I take nothing away from that. It's incredible to see that the Eagles, to me, like much like the Chiefs in some ways, the Eagles have won at times in spite of themselves, and there has been one Herculean lift after another by Saquon throughout the course of this year, while their passing game has been, they've got a lot of money invested at the wide receiver position. They're supposed to be really good. This was supposed to be a team that, like, hey, it's going to be easy for Saquon because not much has been asked of him. Instead, he's had to be the Incredible Hulk every single week, and they're winning through it. This you're right. This is one of the most remarkable running back seasons, maybe the most remarkable running back season. This is the sort of year that we will all tell our great grandkids about because you've got a player that is so beloved going to a division rival. We all saw the coverage of why that division rival chose not to pay him what turns out to be a very reasonable amount of money. And now on a discount bargain bin contract compared to what he should be making, he's out there putting up a historic season. Like, this is straight out of a Disney movie. So we'll see that.
And absolutely one of the great free agent seasons of all time too. I mean, we talk about the greatest free agent signings ever, Drew Brees, Reggie White. Well, if the Eagles win a Super Bowl, Saquon Barkley is up there too, along Peyton Manning with the Broncos. Like, there's a very few free agent signings where you're like, that turned an entire organization around. It led to Super Bowls. Like, and this could be one of them. Real quick on the Eagles passing game, 121 net yards passing in the wild card round. 65 net yards passing today. It's just, I keep saying to myself, like, yeah, they got the defense, they got Saquon, and I do think that if they absolutely possibly needed to pass the ball and it's not snowing the entire second half, that they could get something going. But it's also hard to imagine them winning a Super Bowl unless the passing game gets a little bit better. 210 yards, by the way, is not much in the NFL in 2024 and 25, right? Like, this is 210 yards in a game for an NFL team is not much passing. The Eagles have been 210 yards or fewer 13 times this year in the passing game. Like, that's just mind-boggling to me that they are where they are with a passing game that's just been kind of not good all season long.
Yeah, and I will add on that some situational awareness too. I think, when you start thinking about kind of the late in the, what was it, the first half where the safety happened? No, it was the third quarter where the safety happened. Like, Jalen Hurts dropping back. They're not throwing the ball well, dropping back. He didn't see what looked like at least the outlet to try and get it out of the end zone to Saquon on the side. And before you know it, like, Hurts got to play a lot smarter.
Jalen couldn't really move either. We haven't even touched on really the knee injury where that didn't look good. He wasn't moving great after the game. He's kind of just like, I don't know. We'll see. I finished the game. Like, I don't know if he's just playing coy. I think after the game, Jory Epstein was there and she, mentioned that he was a little more confident. I'll be fine. But I don't know. I mean, Jalen Hurts, who can't move around very well right now, is I don't want to say a liability, but he's not an asset. Like, it's Jalen Hurts is getting the job done. I respect the heck out of Jalen Hurts. I watched him in a Super Bowl almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs nearly by himself, but that him and the entire Eagles passing game is just a shell of what it's been.
Yeah. So now we get an NFC Championship game that is a division rivalry matchup. Like, these two teams split this year. So, it's important to note that the Eagles and the Commanders, they each won against each other over the course of the year. So, Obviously that was a game where I think when the Commanders won that game, Kenny Pickett was in. So, but Jayden Daniels did have 5 touchdowns in that game. So they ended that 10-game winning streak. I don't know. I feel like there's a chance. Maybe I'm just in the moment and I want there to be a chance. But Frank, I just look at the Jayden Daniels situation. I'm like, it feels really good. The only thing that we all know, and we knew it going into this game, Washington doesn't really do a great job stopping the run, and they didn't do a great job stopping the run in this game, and they still got a big win. But taking on Saquon, where I'm not sure you're going to be able to do a great job stopping the run, that makes me a little bit. In the last game in the Washington win, Saquon had 29 carries for 150 yards. Like, it's just Saquon's going to eat. There's no doubt about that. So the question is, how do you see it?
Yeah, and it's one of these things where Washington is just so efficient on offense. I get the whole punting stat, like it gets skewed because they always go for it, right? They don't punt a lot, but they don't really punt a lot. Like, they just usually score. I mean, this is an unbelievably efficient Washington offense all year. Like I said, Jayden Daniels threw 5 touchdowns against this Philly defense. Week 16, that's not long ago. The Phillies shut down just about everybody else, but Washington got him a little bit. Jayden Daniels got him a little bit. It was impressive. But this is still a Philly team. I believe now they're 14-1 since September, counting the playoffs. It's almost impossible to pick against them at home in an NFC Championship game against this Commanders team that is still flawed. Look, I get it. Like, they're having this great season. What a story. They're going to be so much better in a year or two. Like, this is not the finished product for the Washington Commanders. And they're in an NFC Championship game. And usually those stories come to some kind of an end. You hit the wall at some point. But I'll say this, like, this game opened at, like, I think it was Washington plus 5.5 at BetMGM. I'll take Washington in the points. They're going to keep this close. They're going to compete in this game because they got that dude at quarterback who could just carry everything on his shoulders and make a team much, much better than it should be.
I'm just looking back, and I totally forgot this. I mean, Washington in that game, also, Jayden threw 2 picks, and Washington fumbled the ball 3 times. 5 turnovers.
Yeah, that was a weird game.
I just forgot about that till you reread. I'm going with my heart. It's early on. I don't have to think yet. I could just go with my feels. I want Jayden Daniels to go to the Super Bowl because it feels like that's a great story.
What a story that would be. And they could do it. Look, when you have, again, one team can't pass the ball, really. Like, they are one of the worst passing offenses in the NFL right now. And you're going against a quarterback who's on all-time heater for a rookie, and he could just seemingly do whatever he wants, and it makes it hard to defend them when you know it's going to be a 4-down series every time. Like, we're going for it on 4th. Get ready. It's going to be a challenge for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll tell you that, and they're going to make some adjustments from that game where they gave up all those touchdowns to Jayden Daniels. But this is a challenge. This is a real big challenge, and yes, honestly, do I want Washington to win? Yes, because I think it would be an unbelievable story for this rookie quarterback.
Can we actually,
we've never seen anything like it.
Could we actually get a Super Bowl rematch? Like, you think about it, the Bills have lost 4 of those Super Bowls. One of those was to Washington. Can we get a Washington-Buffalo Super Bowl? Come on, Frank, give me what I need.
We can get an Eagles Chiefs rematch too from a couple years ago.
That's not as fun.
Game.
All right,
so there's a couple on the table.
That's not as nostalgic back to like 90. What was that? 92, 93, like early 90s.
91, the end of the 91 season. Yeah, Mark Rippon at the Metrodome. Yeah, that was that was a great Washington team. Goodness, this is not a great Washington team, but they have a heck of a player. And I'll tell you what. Like, again, if you would have told, like, even like go back, I'll take a little bit of a lap here. In the offseason, I was like, Commanders, watch out for the Commanders. They're a really good team. They can make the playoffs.
Damn.
In my wildest dreams, I never expected the Washington Commanders to be in the NFC Championship game. Nobody did. The most optimistic Washington fan you could find had no clue that this team was going to be in the NFC Championship game. They didn't win a playoff game since 2005. Like, all of a sudden, this kid arrives on their doorstep from LSU with his Heisman Trophy, and all of a sudden they're in the Final Four. I have friends who root for this franchise, and they're all like, is this really happening? Like, this is an unbelievable story, and they're one win away from making it an even more unbelievable story, the likes of which, again, we've really never seen in the NFL.
Which is all the more reason why when we are together covering the draft in just a few short months, there will be so much conversation about quarterback, because the reality of it is, for 2 straight years, we've seen that you can go from being just a joke of a franchise to being a legitimate week in, year out, year in, year out, competitive playoff caliber franchise that is respected on the football field if you can simply get it right with the head coach and a quarterback. But Houston did it 2 years ago. Washington's done it now, and you just got to, like every other team right now that's looking at the hiring cycle is hoping to God that they can replicate the same thing. We'll break it all down throughout the course of the week. We're not going anywhere. Obviously, Jory will be back with us on Wednesday. Shout out to Stone, producer extraordinaire, always doing the finest of things as he makes this show sound beautiful and look pretty. He does all of the hard work while he sips on tea. I just imagine Stone is editing this like with, I don't know, like a cigar and tea and just very refined. All right, that's the image I want to put in everybody's head. If you've listened this far, congratulations, thank you. Rate, review, subscribe. We appreciate you guys taking the time. Tell a friend, tell a family member, tell an enemy, tell everybody to hang out with us. We will be back all week, and we'll be back next weekend. This time in a week, we'll know what the Super Bowl is going to look like. I can't wait. He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. Follow us on social media. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Thanks for listening.